Welcome to Death Holler, the place of haunted hearts and haunted homes. We welcome you to Death Manor, the home that boasts the most ghosts. Come on in. We've been expecting you. Take a look around. You might see someone that you recognize. Do you hear those voices? That's just the Reverend Dr. Death and La Arena. They're so happy to see you. Sit back and relax. Make yourself at home. Your new home. And remember, when you're in Death Holler, listener discretion is always advised. We hope you enjoy the show.
Just stepping back, and I mean, brought all this on was the John Carpenter thing, but at the same time that John Carpenter was making The Thing, which is probably his best movie. I mean, you could argue some of the other ones, but The Thing, it's hard to surpass that movie.
Yeah,
he got beat by E.T., which Spielberg was, contractually obligated to only do, and yet this movie came out, and it's literally a Steven Spielberg movie. I mean, that's what I was saying. That face ripping scene is the only mark that Tobe Hooper has. You're talking about the guy who made Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Does this give you any vibes whatsoever of that movie at all?
Well, hold on. To circle back a little bit, you know what the funny thing is? The Thing has more long-lasting effect than E.T. does now, though. Like there's true. There is more of a following of the people that more cult classic built into The Thing now that has more long-lasting effect because it was a giant hallmark, and to this day it's still an amazing horror movie.
Well, and you could argue that with anything that Carpenter came out with. I mean, when he got really cynical, like in the mid '80s, about 80s era, Reaganomics and stuff like that, and came out with They Live, which is probably one of the best, political commentaries in history. I mean, that movie didn't get an audience at all back in the day, but now people are like, oh my God, is this not like a description of what we're going through?
And that's wild how much. It's not an immediate in the moment. It did good at the box office. His movies have like a legit longevity factored into them that spans across a lot of different eras of like the transition of movies and where they've went. Even to this day, those movies hold up hell good. It's just like Videodrome with James Woods. That still holds up and amazing. It's whoever wrote Videodrome did a dead-on job of predicting how people were going to be in the future.
I know that movie was directed by Cronenberg. I don't know who wrote it, but that's one of those Cronenberg films because it's got a lot of the body horror in it.
Oh, huge. Stuff
coming out of bodies and all that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But as far as Spielberg, we can't write off Spielberg. I mean, obviously the guy with Jurassic Park and with, like some of his other movies. I mean, E.T.'s, one that's probably on the lesser, it's definitely on the lesser end of the scale. But I mean, The Goonies still has to this day cultural relevance. I mean, there's people that has a nostalgia for that movie, myself included, that's hard to beat. But
it encapsulates that era of what kids could be 100% independent with. Like, that movie is the epitome of freedom as a kid. Like, you ran off the rails and nobody knew what or where you were going.
That is not my childhood.
It's exactly the Kids on Bikes genre that Stranger Things is a part of.
See,
I mean, even circling back to the Ghostbusters movie I just watched, Afterlife, it's Steven Spielberg and Stephen King inspired. That's literally what Stranger Things is.
See, and the weird thing, my wife didn't grow up in that childhood where she had that a ton of autonomy, freedom. That was like Stranger Things was to a T my childhood.
Yeah,
there was nobody accounted for us, and we just did whatever we want on bikes all around the town.
Why do you think I wanted a sibling?
Yeah, but that had nothing to do with siblings.
I just wanted them to lay off of me a little bit.
Yeah.
I was an only
I
child.
was going to discuss this on this episode, and I mentioned to Urena, but you need to watch a movie, a little sleeper hit called Summer of '84. It's exactly the type of movie you're talking about. It's the same setup. It's kids on bikes on the '80s. They, it's kind of got like a Goonies vibe to it, but it takes a very dark turn in it, in the sense that one of the kids, it's got that rear window Hitchcockian thing or Disturbia type thing going on, where there's a serial killer that's living next door, or the kid thinks that he is, and over the course of one summer he investigates these missing kids that are disappearing, that he links to that what he thinks is a serial killer, and it's kind of like a coming of age story set in that time period. But with the same setup, they go out at night, playing this game of like flashlight tag or whatever, and their parents don't give a shit. It's just like the total freedom you're talking about.
Yeah, it's the thing with those movies. It has the story arc is so close to human nature that they survive a lot. Anything that has an amazing story arc, it doesn't matter how much time passes, it holds up. If you have an amazing story arc that feels natural to the human experience, you can't write those things off with time. They hold up hell good.
100%. But I mean, as far as like the Steven Spielberg part of this, I mean, obviously you all are in agreement too. Like this, Tobe Hooper he was basically just the body on set in place of Spielberg for contractual reasons.
I mean, that is, in my opinion, fucking awesome, because that means he got paid.
You talking about Tobe Hooper got paid to do jack shit, basically?
Pretty much, yeah.
They put one awesome special effects scene together, and that was it.
And it's the best effect in the movie.
Hands down.
And then I put in there the random thoughts I've already mentioned. The black researcher looks like Ray Parker Jr. This especially, he's in the scene where there's this the next scene in the movies where all this spectral light's like coming down the stairs, and it coalesces in the form, like it looks like one thing, but then whenever they play it back on the videotape, it's like all these different spirits.
Well, hold on. Let me interrupt you, because I want to circle back to that scene in the mirror. If you really understand the magnitude of that scene, you understand that it actually, without that scene in the movie, you missed a giant horror factor in the entire equation. It's non-existent.
Oh, exactly.
Without that scene, I don't know if that movie even qualifies as a horror movie to a degree.
It doesn't at all. Like, I mean, you've got a scary clown and a tree that eats people, and then the corpses bursting up at the end. That's it. That's all that's in this movie.
And the corpses don't do anything. They're all show and no go. That one scene gives you a taste of how dangerous it can get.
The skull comes out of the closet.
Yeah, but even then, that's nothing over the top frightening about what it can do to you really happens, other than the scene in the mirror when he's ripping his face off. Like,
yeah.
This is how scary it really is.
I don't know. Swimming in a mud pit.
Stakes, basically.
Yeah, swimming in a mud pit full of corpses, though. I mean, like, you saw me. I was fucking screaming. I was like freaking out. Like, that is.
Yeah, but if you show that to her kids, they'd be like, why is she yelling? Tell me I'm wrong.
Get out.
But the part where the guy's ripping his face off.
Yeah.
That would. You need that part of any horror movie that instills the fear mechanism to the equation. If you don't ever land it, then the fear is subjective and it doesn't really
I guess it just depends on because what scares you and what scares me, or what, you know.
If I was to show you the movie now and remove the part where he rips his face off, would you still be as frightened leading up to the other stuff?
Maybe not as frightened leading up to maybe. And the reason why I say this is because there's nothing like the fear of what is supposed to happen or what you think is going to happen. Me creating my own drama in my head. I am the type of person that I would be scared because I'm expecting so much more.
Yeah, but the
typical person, like our
visceral
kids,
gives you what could happen. So when you're confronted with the reality of what could happen, you have now set the precedence. Like, this is on the table.
Yeah,
this could happen to me. So now all of a sudden, you getting sucked into the closet becomes more visceral because you can imagine what happened to you in your head. So what's going to happen if you get pulled into that? It gives you an actual framework of what could potentially happen.
Yeah.
If you get sucked into the closet.
Yes.
So it adds a giant factor of fear.
Yes.
I'll give you an example from a movie that I love that came out, not too long ago, The Final Girls. And I've mentioned this before, but it's like, it's this horror comedy. And like the movie is mostly played as like, kind of like this drama about this girl losing her mom, and the comedy aspects that are brought in by like Adam Devine and some other people in the movie. But the scene that establishes the threat they're dealing with is early on in the movie, where there's like, I mean, and a lot of the characters are kind of like Scooby-Doo, like analogs, honestly. I mean, there, you know, there's the Velma, Daphne, you know, but the Shaggy character in the movie, he's a horror nerd. So like when they get trapped in the movie, that's the gist of the movie. He's like, you know, he's geeking out. He's like, oh, this is the scene where, you know, the slasher comes in and does this scene where the big boob girl, like, you know, is doing her thing. But like, you know, and he's totally loving it. But like he's sitting there and the slasher, you know, sees him. And that's, you know, so first of all, it establishes that, you know, that they're not just like, you know, standard, you know, or, you know, just like these people that are standing by the sidelines. They're, you know, actually in this, that they can be interacted with. And then the killer like turns around and actually attacks him with a machete. And like, he's the first death in the movie. And it establishes the groundwork. It's like, okay, we're fucked. This isn't just like a horror movie that we can like, you know, waste 92 minutes trying to get the plot to move through, you know, and get out of here. We can actually die. It sets the stakes and the grounding for what they're, you know, they're in, you know?
Yes. You're now saying the framework, like this is on the table.
Yeah.
So it all of a sudden now it makes the idea of getting sucked into the black hole, not so much that you'll die, but there's grave consequences leading up to your death are going to be horrendous for you.
Yes. It
really heightens the allowable amount of fear to really take root into the equation.
Yeah. So you said, and maybe I'm not understanding the question right. If they removed the face ripping scene out, would I still be as scared? Right? Is that what you're asking? And I'm telling you, I personally would be, but most other people probably wouldn't be.
I think it would change your level of fear. I think, believe it or not, I think the visceral part of anything.
Because me, like the steak and the face ripping scene, while I thought it was cool, in my opinion, I thought it was gross. I didn't find it scary. I found it squeamish.
So let's do this. Let's look at a zombie movie.
No, I don't want to.
I know, but let's set the framework. So let's look at a zombie movie. And every time someone's about to get eaten by a zombie, it cuts the scene. You don't see what happens to him. Does it still have the same impact that it would when a zombie gets a hold of somebody? Huge. Probably, it changes everything. Because you get to see the zombies rip people apart alive. Yeah. Now, all of a sudden, if you remove that from a zombie movie, the zombie movie doesn't have that same, like, oh my God, how bad is it going to get? It's a huge factor into the equation.
Yeah. But for me in this film, it wasn't, I don't know. It was a great scene. I don't think that the film would have did, maybe I'm not saying that the film would do as great as without it. Because like I said, I would not want the scene removed. I loved it. But I don't know. I'm scared of other shit.
I want to make one comment that's in the middle road between all this stuff, though. I agree with both of you to a certain extent. You could make the argument that, like, the movie, and this is a caveat, I'm going to get into what my caveat is about this, that the movie, if you remove that scene and it was just about a mother losing her daughter to these, like, spirits and all that, if it was just that, then you could, you know, make a horror movie just based upon that and some of the stuff that pops up in the movie without the face ripping scene. But this is a critique of this movie, and I can't argue it. They say that when Jerry Goldsmith made the music for this movie, the actual orchestral sound that you know, the songs that you hear in the background is light and fluffy. It's more of an adventure film.
Yes.
It's a Lifetime. It's a Lifetime movie.
Because of the fact that they filmed it that way and put that score to it, it takes out all of the terror in the movie until that scene pops up.
Yeah, if you remove the face ripping scene, it's a Lifetime movie. Just saying, that's how I view
an episode of The Ghost Whisperer.
Yeah.
But if you scored it differently and you gave it like, you know, the thing they always do in horror movies where they give like the sharp sounds, like the harpsichord type thing. It's like, you know, like sharp noises and stuff like that. You could have made a horror film, edited around that would have worked without that scene, but they didn't make that movie. That's not, I mean, we can't make that argument because literally when you're listening to music, I mean, if you listen to the theme song for this, it doesn't sound like a horror. It's like la, 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 la. I mean, that's literally the theme song to the Poltergeist movie.
Yeah,
it's really weird when it pops up on like any kind of horror like CD soundtrack or something like that. You're like listening to how like Halloween sounds, and you're like listening to that great Carpenter do 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 do, and then all of a sudden this pops up, and you're like, what the fuck am I listening to?
But if you look at any horror movie and you remove the part that shows the more visceral nature of the outcome, that has a huge impact on the ramifications. Like, it's always abstract, like, yeah, you're gonna die. It's like, yeah, okay, you're gonna die, but how bad was the death? That's the thing.
I
that
agree with that.
and that thing will grip you. And any outcome of what the death is gonna lead up to is a part that makes it over the top scary. Because if all of a sudden you just die instantly without the pain factor, it's like, okay, you're gonna die. No, it's gonna be like Texas Chainsaw Massacre death. It's
But
gonna
in
be
this
the
movie,
most over
you
the top.
die and then you become a spirit. And the boy, was specifically terrified of that, as he says in one scene.
The
Yeah,
funny
but
thing
he's
about
also-
Texas Chainsaw Massacre that most people don't realize is there's barely any blood in that movie.
Yeah, that's true. Now that you say
Wow.
that.
Because they do such a good job of setting up what the scene is, what your mind thinks happens, and then what they show the body afterward. You're like, okay, there's some bad shit that just happened. Like Hooper did a good job in that movie, like filling in the blank or letting you fill in the blanks for yourself when it comes to that.
Well, I want to go into one part that you had mentioned, or you started to mention, is the spectral lighting at the top of the stairs, and how you said that had a kind of a Ghostbusters effect.
It does. It really looks like that scene where like the spirits are flying out of the top of the tower where Gozer's is at. It really looks like that.
Yeah, and I thought that the poltergeist coming out of the door were the second time the vortex is trying to take now both of the kids, when the mom was trying to get in and that spirit just jumped out at her in the middle of the not jumped out at her, it's on the door, it's attached to the door still, and she's in the hallway just getting fucked up because she's getting thrown around like a little rag doll. I thought that looked like Ghostbusters too. That gave me the Ghostbusters effect.
It kind of did, but at the same time, that scene you're talking about specifically where she like touches the doorknob and like she gets electrocuted or whatever and flies backwards, that has such a Spielbergian, like going back to what Noah was saying, literally just a second ago. It's got the Spielberg thing where he tamps down like the visceral, nature of things, because she gets shocked. But if you watch that scene, she floats to the ground. It's like she doesn't just get knocked back; she floats back.
Yeah. Wait. Are you talking
And
about
it takes away
in
that
her room?
visceral, like shit. This stuff's really hurting her.
Wait, are you talking about in her room or in the hallway?
No, when she's down in the lower part of the house, right before she runs out into that big scene with a swimming pool.
Yeah.
And the corpses, she grabs like a door handle or door, I think, and like it shocks her, and then like she gets knocked back, but you see her lightly float. To
she
the
did
ground,
that in her
like,
bedroom too. She did kind of slowly come down the wall, real.
You know what got me? Like, talk about ripping off Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah.
Like,
you know what?
Well,
the bedroom scene
true.
where her
that's 100%.
When her nightshirt kept getting pulled up, that reminded me of a really, really old film called The Entity, where it was the ghost that constantly, well, it was basically it was an incubus, the one that kept raping her.
I thought that was a pretty hot part. Something about a t-shirt and panties, like to any guy, you're like, yeah, I can dig that. That's solid. It's like when you see an old lady with t-shirt and panties, it's like, yeah, they like that. Let's do that look.
If you want to hear more about this, there's Blue Collar BS.
Whatever. You just tell me these guys ain't watching these horror movies, ain't checking out these women. Like,
these
come on.
whores in the horror films.
It's a common thing. I mean, there's scream queens for a reason. I
yes,
mean,
exactly.
Quigley is known for two major things, and they're right there up top for you to see. I mean, it's the Return of the Living Dead. I watched that way too young as a kid.
Oh my god.
Fun bag.
I've seen in that
part when she's in the graveyard when I was a kid.
Yes.
Like, there was a lot of moments I watched that movie by myself. I'm gonna leave it at that.
She might have messed up my image of women. That's all I'm
Oh,
gonna say
big
with that
time.
scene.
Yes. I think that's funny you say that, because I've had this conversation with other guys about that movie, and that is a very true statement. When you're a young kid, like 6 years old, and you happen to get a hold of that movie and you watch it, you're like, women are like this? Like, because she's a rocker punk chick that gets buck naked in the graveyard. Like, this is awesome. Like, as a young
spike collar, she's like ripping her top off.
A young 80s boy, like watching that, you're like, this is amazing.
And she's also in that movie Now the Demons, where she does like a scene where she literally sticks a lipstick container or tube into one of her nipples, and bends over and like shows her panties in her ass to people. So I mean, yes, that's a thing in horror films, especially from that time
Have you seen Night of the Demons?
I think I have, but it's been a long time. I'm sure it's something we're going to address.
I remember watching that. So when we used to go to the drive-ins, my mom would go. We go to the drive-ins, and they would go to see a movie, Then they'd cut us loose, and we would go to any other movie because the speakers were still there.
Yeah.
So we'd go, and I remember one time they were playing Night of the Demons, and we just told my mom, "Well, we're gonna go look for a different movie." I forgot what they were singing, some stupid movie.
Yeah.
And so we're like, we're gonna go see something else, and they happened to be playing Night of the Demons. So it was me, my two brothers, my cousin, and somebody else. We went and we were standing at the back of the drive-in. I think we had chairs. We had brung chairs, and we were sitting there watching it. And I remember watching the Lipstick Park when she does that, and like it got quiet because like we were talking through the whole movie. And when that happened, we all got quiet and we're looking at each other. Like, that was awesome.
Oh my God.
You're talking about like young 8-year-old, 10-year-old kids or whatever it was.
Night of the Demon. But you know what? Another movie similar that I'm sure the Reverend absolutely prefers over Night of the Demon would be Bordello of Blood.
That's a horrible
I'm
movie.
joking.
That is a
No, I mean
horrible.
It's good for its purpose, but it's not to watch it for a horror film.
I'm totally
That-
fucking with you guys.
Oh, I hate Corey Feldman with the passion, dude.
When you're about 13 or 14 and you don't have access to, or the internet, I mean, that movie was a good one.
Yes,
So I'm
It'll
gonna
do.
say
blessing,
that's
yeah.
about the extent of it.
Oh my God. Okay, let's move forward.
But anyways, in this movie, they watch the Spectral Light, playback. I watched like some behind the scenes thing that I thought was like going to be like a documentary, about them making the movie, but it ended up being like a bunch of paranormal researchers talking about how this movie inspired them to get into the business. And like this scene in particular was like one that they referenced because of the fact that it's like the first time they've ever documented or really documented a movie, like, taking like electronic equipment and filming ghosts and stuff like that. So
Ghost facers.
This scene technically is the reason that we got Ghost Adventures, Ghost Hunters, Dead Files, all that stuff that you see on TV now.
And Ghost Facers.
This scene in the movie.
You cannot
And
forget
Ghost
Ghost
Chasers.
Facers.
What is it?
Ghost Facers was a parody of basically any paranormal show, and it was on Supernatural.
Oh, my God.
It was these
I'm
two
so
kids.
glad I'm not into that show.
These two kids that were basically doofs that also did not have any real experience with the paranormal, but they were trying to make a show, and they got way in over their heads with some of the shit.
And it plays out like basically like a version of Ghost Adventures, where
Yeah.
Zach Bagans doing his thing or whatever. Robbie at this point is in the movie is sent away because the parents realize there's a lot more shit going on. I don't know what
It
the hell
took them
happens
a
to Dana,
long
the oldest
fucking
girl.
time.
Like, do they mention it? Did I miss something during this part of the movie?
Yes, they did. They said that she's basically staying at friend's house all the time, and that she rarely stays at the house.
She's barely in the movie. Like,
Yeah.
literally.
She's at her boyfriend's house spending the night.
Yeah.
Oh, is she now?
Look I think at this point, as dumb as the parents have been up to this point to even keep their kids and the dog in the house at this point, I think they'd be like, yeah, go stay at your boyfriend's house because there's some fucking shit going on in this house.
See, I don't feel like the parents got dumb until the very end of the movie.
Well, because it took
So-
them a long time to realize, holy shit, there's some fucked up shit going in the house. And just like the mom stayed in this house because most people would piece the fuck out, I would have pieced the fuck out before my kid disappeared into the fucking evil abyss. But I too, even as scared as I would be, would not leave if I lost one of my children somewhere in that house. So they had to stay, but why keep the other kids?
Public service announcement for the people at home that are listening to this. Unwanted teen pregnancy is preferred over keeping your child in a house that's supposedly haunted.
Yes.
Continue.
You're welcome. The more you know.
Be safe. Be safe.
At this point in the movie, which don't make any, they give a reason, but it's like the paranormal researchers like leave, but the lead paranormal researcher's like, I'll be back, and it's like, okay, you still haven't solved our problem, but
Yeah.
here we are. Steve is visited by his boss, and that's where we have the major scene, with Teague or whatever, where he takes him up on the hillside. We have that, that's where they reveal Carol Ann was born in the house for whatever that, we're not gonna go back into it, but whatever that means. The cemetery did exist on the land, but it was moved 5 minutes away.
Yeah.
Hint, nudge, nudge. And it's not an ancient Indian burial ground. And then Steve has the great line, it's like whenever he mentions, he's like, well, let's just move 5 minutes away. It's not that far. And then Steve's like, well, did anyone tell them?
Yeah.
You know the thing about this part of that scene in particular, that was a hella good scene. Because
it was.
Coach did an amazing job of acting that scene out. Like it felt tangible and visceral. Like you could, the reaction he had to it, like that scene was a critical, not just the scene, but the acting in that scene was a critical aspect to frame it.
Yeah, he had an epiphany.
Not this epiphany. You could tell, like, to him, it like the character itself brung on the emotion, like how severe that was. It wasn't just a half-ass, like he phoned it in and acted it. It was like, it was a legit part of the movie.
I've seen him in True Beverly Hills. He's a great actor.
Well, just the look on his face, like when he mentions this thing about the cemetery, it's like his whole demeanor changes. Like he, without even saying anything, you can tell it's like, are you fucking kidding me?
Yes.
Yeah. It's like, is that why we're doing this?
I almost physically heard him say it, but it was just his emotion. He was just emoting it.
Well, both of them too, because the other guy was just sleazy about it, and he sold the sleaziness, like it. Because when he said it and made you immediately question, like, well, did you really move it?
Would you question moving things around in a graveyard at all like that? You personally? Morally, I would. I'd be like, holy shit, like you don't do that to the dead.
I don't want to be buried. I don't want to be burned. I think I think it's a waste, and I think it's super over the top, disrespectful.
Okay, that's great, but that aside,
I'm gonna you asked my question. I'm gonna try to give it to you. I think it's over the top, disrespectful that they think we should be burying people and taking up land that can be utilized for society.
Okay.
And so I find that to be like, you're better off, like, because let's understand what a graveyard is. Nobody really goes to graveyards. Let's be honest there. You're talking about out of all the people that are in graveyards, you'd be lucky if you saw 3% foot traffic of the amount of people that are buried there. So we already understand that it's a wasted space. You're better off getting cremated and having an urn that can actually be legitimately passed down from household to household.
You can go visit your loved one there.
That's a legit, and you're not actually taking up real estate that can be used productively for society.
So you would definitely yeet a coffin to build something.
Yes.
To prospect. Okay, that's.
Not only that, but I think there's more, like, if I die and we need actual fertilizer and different stuff, I think people can make productive use of turning their bodies into compost to help further produce society. People might disagree, but I think it's better use of land and actual resources available to do that.
I agree. And fun fact, moving coffins and moving bodies and moving graveyards in general is very fucking common. And there are places that now, because land is running out and where you can bury bodies, now they're making it to where you have to rent your gravesite.
Which is insane.
And I don't know that that's necessarily a thing yet in America, but it's going to be happening in America real fast.
So the family pays for infamy?
Correct. And not only that, so you're renting the spot, but if you don't pay your rent, you get yeeted.
But how about this? How about by the time you have great grandkids that never interacted with you, now they're on the hook to pay for somebody, and they don't know what kind of horrible piece of shit that person might have been. There's like a quantifier of other calculations. So you're paying for somebody you have no attachment at all other than lineage, and like that, you don't know the atrocities that person might have did in the process in their private life.
Well, you'd be shocked to find,
because we always make people that die as holier than thou.
Oh yeah,
you don't ever speak bad about the dead.
You'll be shocked to find that these great-great-grandchildren do not pay the rent. And so these bodies, right, currently in certain places, there's literally, and it's not obviously in America, but there's literally warehouses full of bodies unclaimed because their kids are not paying, or their family's not paying rent.
That's what I'm talking about. It's an insane.
They do get purged after a certain amount of time. I forget how many days it is before they get purged, and they basically get cremated.
But your body is a resource that has vitamins, nutrients, and minerals that can be regularly distributed to productive uses.
The circle of life.
Yeah, it happens. It's like we don't put animals in boxes and bury them. Why? Because that's insane.
What are you talking about? How many dead animals do we have in our backyard?
Yeah, they're not in coffins.
Pescado has his own little fishy thingy.
Why?
Because I did.
Here's my question. After all those years of paying rent for one of your relatives to be buried somewhere, do you get to build a house on top of that? Does that pay more than the house that you build on their
Can you write it off?
You're renting that land. Like, hey, can I just pitch a cabin right here or something in the middle of this graveyard? You know what? That is, you are asking all the right questions is what you're doing right now.
Yeah, I find the idea of burying ourselves in boxes and not only that, but once you do that, you're removing resources from the natural ecosystem in the process.
So I personally would not yeet a body to build. That's just me, like I said, morally, but I can see why people would.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with anything that you just said about any of that stuff, because honestly, I've thought about myself, and I think I would rather be like, cremated and like, taken out like on like some place that I like to hike to, and just like have my, ashes like, dispensed there.
Make sure I'm dead.
Well, yeah, there's that. You don't want a whole Scrooge thing going on where, you're, getting burned alive inside the coffin. But I would argue that I think people need to see the body in the coffin prior to all that, just to be able, I mean, a lot of people do, to be able to, as part of the grieving process.
Yeah.
So if I don't argue that they need to be buried in the ground and like take up space. Cause I mean, you literally are just going there to stand over what you think is their body, which is, or whatever. And that's the only, but if they did it a different way where like, they somehow, I don't know, they still had the burial, like you saw them in the coffin and all that to allow you to have the emotional part of it. But then like, after the fact was able to, use, like you were talking about the body for different means, but then like gave you a place that you could say that's where they're buried. Like, so mentally you could think that or whatever.
Yeah.
See, but it would be
it's convenient. It's like a rental car. You use it for a couple days. Next.
Well, it would be more awesome if you made a plaque with a picture of the person and then a small summary of their life that was all in metal or something like that. And then you could pass that down, because if you ever wanted to reflect, you would have a synopsis that's printed on that in a picture.
Obituary that you don't have to pay for in the papers, and it's there forever.
But that's more of something you could pass down lineage-wise. Hey, these are part of your ancestral tree. These are these people. To me, that has more. I
don't disagree with that at all. And honestly, on top of that, with today's technology, you could give them some kind of like, tablet type thing.
Oh,
that, actually had maybe like pictures of them and, through their, like youth and, as they were growing. And so you don't lose the memory of the person, even to people who never saw them. It's like, this is your grandpa. This is what he looks like.
You got music playing in the background. Another one bites the dust comes on.
But people are lazy. People don't ever go to graveyards to really visit the dead. Let's be honest. That's super
I
honest.
haven't gone to visit.
So if you had a placard at your house or some kind of indicator that has a synopsis of the person and a picture, it's something that you could walk by every time and remember them.
One more crazy coffin story, and this is somebody that you guys we mutually kind of know. Well, you and I know her. Reverend, you know of her. Tits on Hot Mess Express. Her father, rest in peace, was cremated and distributed amongst the family. I think either in little urns or whatever, containers or little rocks or something, because you can do that. You can crystallize them in a rock. It's really pretty and everything. But he also has a gravesite. There's no body in it. He has a whole gravesite to himself, and they go and they visit it, even though I believe he is, again, distributed amongst the family.
That's the worst of both worlds.
I don't understand it. People grieve the way that they grieve, and obviously I feel very terribly for my friend, but I do
that's
agree.
just being selfish at that.
Yeah. Now, that being said, if that area, let's say that whole graveyard was like that, there was no bodies, could you morally now landscape there?
Just think about how insane that is. Like,
I know.
Oh, well, I want this piece of property for this person.
Yeah.
Are you making use of it? No. Are they making use of it? Like, at one point, you have to logically start running down what you're really doing.
Yeah. I don't know why they did it. I don't know if it was the mom. She's Hispanic, so I don't know, if it's
goddamn
anything.
Other cultures outside the U.S.
It could be. It could very well be. So like I said, I don't claim to question how people do their mourning or why, but it is something to me that I have questioned her, and I felt bad because they get emotional.
See, and
why?
But how are you supposed to pass that down? So you're supposed to tell every single offspring, hey, let's go to this gravesite.
They do. That's exactly what they do.
There's this giant disconnect in that equation. At least when there's some kind of placard or something, because you can have a placard made.
Exactly.
You can pass down that lineage from individual to individual.
That's the crazy thing. They have that. They have a piece of him, literally to pass down, because the body is not in the actual grave. So, but
how many of them actually show up to the gravesite?
A lot. I see pictures every year. For Veterans Day.
Okay, then they're better people than us.
They're utilizing it. I still don't get it.
How long until that goes? Is it going to be lost in a generation?
Mentally, here's my thing: is that if it were my dad. This is just me. I'm not trying to be insensitive, but if I have my dad right here, okay, he's with me. But if I go to the grave, that's super far away, by the way. But if I go out there, I don't feel like my dad's there unless I bring the piece of him that I actually physically have with me. And then it's like,
the last thing I want to do is go to a graveyard to try to remember somebody.
Yeah.
Why would I not stay in my own house?
Yeah.
And remember the ideas when they came over to visit?
I don't disagree with that. Like, I mean, it's I've always kind of felt the same way. It's like you can conjure up the memory of them no matter where you're at.
Yeah, absolutely.
100. This whole argument, though, just kind of reminds me of that, just going back to that scene from, like, Night of the Living Dead, both the original and the remake, where, like, the brother's literally fighting with his sister Barbara over that.
Yeah.
Johnny's, like, telling her, he's like, why are we driving all the way out here? She was kind of, why did she have herself buried in the middle of friggin' nowhere? It's like, that this is a waste of time. We come out here every year just to stand for a few seconds, put some flowers on the grave, and have to drive the 2 hours back. Why don't we have her moved closer to where we live at?
And how long ago was that movie made again?
Oh my God.
Same questions arise.
What are we doing?
It's a logical question, but nobody wants to address it or ask it. They're like, "Oh, that's mean." It's like, well, why?
Yeah,
Can I start with the question why?
Yes. Without you thinking that I'm being an insensitive prick, about it. I legitimately want to know. You can't even say that anymore now. Like, hey, not being an asshole. I just legitimately want to know. And like immediately people are like, you're being an asshole.
Yeah.
Well, fine.
Well, they get butthurt over everything too. So,
all right,
there's that whole thing.
Shall we move on to Tangina Barons?
Yeah, let's go some Tangina here. I mean,
let's jump into some Tangina.
In the movie.
Who knows Tangina Barons?
That's not how you pronounce it.
Oh,
that's how I pronounce it.
What the hell?
I assume it's Tangina or something, but Zelda Rubinstein is the actress's name.
That's the short lady with the squeaky voice.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. This house is clean.
This house is clean.
Steve doesn't trust her ability when she's first introduced because he's trying to talk to her mentally, but then she kind of reveals from the stairs. She's like, "Oh, I heard you. It's just that I don't respond to parlor tricks or whatever."
Yeah, that's how my husband would be. He'd be like, "What the fuck did you just bring into our house?" Like, well, what are you doing to change the situation?
There'd be a little quick trial error. There'd be a trial little portion. Oh yeah, this is what you are. Let's test this.
That's not how Jesus works, and that's not how Tangina works.
What's a good thing? That's how I work. If we're gonna act like this is science, let's put some hypotheses together and test the theory.
Would you at least give her the opportunity to prove first before you start questioning?
But it would have to be hard science.
All right. Was there any hard science in this film?
That basically reveals everything that we've kind of discussed as being the problem points in the movie about Carol Ann's life force and the bright light and the souls, can't move on. And there's the beast and whatever that,
Yeah.
I feel like that complicates things more than it really helps, but whatever. And, and she's basically saying that the dark spirits is speaking in Diane's voice and keeping Carol Ann trapped there because she thinks mommy is with her and that sort of thing. She's saying that, and at one point in the movie, she's saying that Carol Ann's trapped by the spirits and can't move because they've got hold on her. And I don't know why. You can tell me what your thoughts are on this. Like she has to have the dad reprimand her because she makes this comment that, or like they're talking and it's like, Steven says, he's like, I don't, discipline the kids like that. I don't. And they're like, it has to be you, and like, so it's up to him to be the asshole. But why?
Well,
why
does it have to? I don't think it's so much of an asshole, but if I don't know if you have kids or whatever, but when you have kids, this is a realistic factor that is so true. My wife can tell my kids a couple different times to do something, and then they might do it once or twice, but then you get to see it with single moms a lot. Kids at a certain point don't take moms serious a lot of times. But when a guy steps in and says it, everything changes.
Yeah,
it's so true.
I think it's the booming voice.
It's also the physicality.
I was going to say, yeah.
My dad, too. My dad was a big guy. I mean, he's as tall as I am now. I'm like 6'3". And, like, as a kid, him towering above you, he gave you that look. It's like, he lowered his voice. It's like, I said, do it now, like you. was like, okay.
Yeah. And
sorry.
I mean, granted, like, he said, I'm not the enforcer. She's the one. Yes. I think a majority of the time, I'm the one enforcing the rules because the husband's working. He's fixing things around the house. He's doing things. It is my job. But then when they're not taking me seriously, he has to step in, and that's when shit happens,
Yeah, I usually don't go about repeating myself. I just do shit now. Like it gets an immediate outcome.
So it made sense to me, basically, is that like, yeah, she might be sitting there telling them what the fuck to do, and for the most part they listen, but there's going to be that one time when dad has to get involved. Wait till your father gets home. It was a big thing back in the 80s.
Because it holds true. Well, it's a scare factor.
Well, it wasn't something that like was totally out, like I couldn't understand it, but it's just like the thing I bring it up is like he's right. Like in the movie, he never shows that part of himself. Like he's pretty easygoing as a dad with his kids.
Yeah, 100. I think they did a good job though, because then they had him. He's like, "Hey, do it and do it now," and it happened.
And then it happens.
So I think it was pretty well represented.
The big thing too is also you didn't get a day by day, time by time, minute by minute.
Yeah, this movie just jumped right into shit.
So there might have been times where he stepped up and was that authority figure that did do it. But I mean, as a parent, you don't like even now to this day with my kids, the ages they are. There's not too many times I got to really do that anymore. There's times when they're Mickey Mousing and fucking around where I got to do it, but other than that, it doesn't need to happen that much. So once you go ahead and say what you're gonna say.
I was going to say, I would argue, though, as far as the movie goes, it'd be more coherent.
Oh, yeah.
It would make better sense if, like, say that scene where Robbie came in there and said he was scared, you know, where they were laying on the bed, if he did exactly what you said earlier.
Oh, yeah, like fuck
if
off.
He was a little bit more forceful and was like, go back to your room, son.
Yeah.
You know,
he was
fine.
very motherly.
Like, if
he
gave
took
a little bit
him
of an
in.
edge then, it would have worked better.
But you saw a glimpse of it, too, at the end when he was walking and the bike was in the way and he jumped his kid's shit. Like, hey, you need to move your goddamn bike. Almost fell over. So
that is true.
So you saw a glimpse, but that stuff like that should have been precursors in the early part of the movie to set the framework up. That the dad he yields, but he doesn't back down when the time needs to arise, when he needs to lay down the law.
If anything, that scene should have happened in the beginning of the film.
Yes.
Yeah, it would have been more cohesive. It would have tied it in together a little bit better. You know, kind of bonded what was happening in this particular scene.
Yeah.
That was my main, like, you know, point I wanted to bring up is it came out of nowhere, and like he even calls attention to it, which makes it a little worse.
Yeah. Like, well, and granted, like I said, it works because yes, he did acknowledge, well, I'm not usually the one who does this, but that doesn't mean at the end of the day that when you do it, it doesn't hold its weight. You know, like it you could not be the enforcer, and once that big booming voice comes through, kids are gonna fucking get straight real fast.
Kind of like those scared straight things they do or whatever, where they get the big guys from prison. It's like, I'm gonna rape your ass if you come in here, boy. You know, like that's
the fuck you in here for?
And the kids are just like, shit.
Yeah. The fuck you in here for? I stole something. The fuck you stole? Bikes.
I stole lives, son.
Oh my God.
So that happens, and then they get real technical with this. Now they use tennis balls and rope to venture into the afterlife.
Oh
I mean,
God,
you gotta get technical on this shit now. I mean,
hey, fucking drove home. Okay, wait a second.
So hard to watch that.
Those balls. Okay, the balls that came through. I saw them go in as tennis balls. Did they? I know they came out as balls, but were they still?
They got coated with that stuff.
That stuff. Okay, I was like, why is there
ectoplasm?
They looked like the baseballs that the dog from Sandlot grabbed hold of.
Yes.
I mean, that's probably a reference only a few will get.
Okay,
but that's literally what they look like.
Yeah, that makes sense because he was like, I see my handwriting. I was like, I can't see shit.
Well, they basically got coated in the same stuff the mother and daughter were coated. It's like some kind of ectoplasm.
The placenta.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a neat little scene between Tangina and Diane at this point where she's like, Tangina's like, help me tie this rope around my waist, and Diane's like, what do you think you're doing? And Tangina's like, I'm going in after her, and Diane's like, she won't come to you, let me go. And Tangina's like, you've never done this before, and Diane's like, neither of you. And Tangina just pauses. She's like, you're right, go.
That was such a horrible. Why was that in the movie?
Just to give that like comedic relief right before a major tense.
But that wasn't comedic at all. It didn't land.
I thought it was funny.
It
funny. Was like stupid funny.
It was okay.
Yeah.
Which, speaking of that, I got to throw something back. Go way back. The one good thing the girl does, that's Egon Spengler's daughter in Ghostbusters Afterlife, is she tells just a torrent of dad jokes throughout the whole movie. Because it's the only way she can connect with people, and some of them are so bad they're good. So,
but that's the thing is that lady doesn't have any framework to indicate she's some kind of joker.
No, not at all. Neither one of them in this particular scene, especially for what they're about to do.
Yeah.
So yes, I could see that scene. It's like, why? But I could totally see me having that argument. Like, you're not going to go in there and get my child. I'm going to go.
It would have worked better if the husband and wife were the one having that exchange, and the husband made that comment to her.
I'm going to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. But
you never been either. Like the comedic aspect would, because they already have a goofy relationship, comedic in nature.
Yeah.
You've seen that in the beginning of the movie. So if they would have made them two the ones doing that, it would have landed.
The problem, though, is that...
you're saying if Steve was the one that was saying that to Diane?
Yeah, if the husband and wife.
100% been
yes,
better.
But you got to remember, even though Tangina has not been into a vortex like this before, she's the one who got them to this point. Because you got to remember, they couldn't even get into the room.
Hold on.
So she has gotten them this far.
Nothing about this lady screams that she's going to fly in the face of evil and put athletic ability in front.
I mean, you don't know, because there's all it can be is
she's
inferred.
5 foot.
She's closer to hell. She's probably, that's why short people are mean.
She looks like hell. Okay, come on.
She does. That's why she's not scared.
No, but nothing about her screams adventurer.
No, not
at
all.
The wife screams adventurer. The husband screams adventurer. So they were better representations of the argument taking place.
Well, yes, but like I said, just because she hasn't been in here yet, she got them this far, so she thought in her mind, Tangina thought that she was going to be the one
this lady
to go through.
Tangina is a horrible actor.
But she didn't go. At the end of the day, she didn't, and that's why for me the scene works.
I'm just glad she died in the third one.
Oh, come on with the spoiler alerts. Jesus Christ. Okay, well, thanks for tuning in. This is Death Holler. I'm Laya Arena, Reverend Dr. Death, and we will catch you in the next episode.
Are we just going to blank over the fact that you told that joke in a roundabout way about like short women, why they're full of hells, or why they're
meaner because
they're closer to hell?
We're closer to hell.
Out there, give you props for that one. I mean,
my husband has firsthand experience. He has been with lots of short girls. We are not to be messed with.
Here's the reason that I think Tangina is a problem in this movie is because this very next scene where Steve comes up there, because they got to have Steve there because he's the only one that can hold the rope.
Yeah.
Because I mean, she doesn't tell him anything about what she's planning on doing.
Oh,
and
yeah.
This is the reason that she fails and why I said earlier that she helps ? She's sitting there and she's told him the entire time, Carol Ann doesn't need to go to the light. She needs to stay away from it. In this scene, she specifically tells Carol Ann, she's like, run to the light, Carol Ann. That's like this is the line everybody remembers from this movie. And the dad naturally looks around like, what the fuck did you just say? You said not to run to the light. And he starts freaking out and he starts like pulling the rope back. And then she's like, no, Steve, it's too soon. Why didn't she tell him? It's not like the spirits would have been listening in or anything. I don't understand like her thinking in this scene. Like, don't tell the frightened dad that I've got something I want to do. Just, stay cool with it. It makes no sense.
You remember before they did this, she said specifically to why can't I think of the mom's name right now?
Diane.
Diane. She says to Diane, will you do whatever I tell you to do and not question, even if it's something you think that you should not be doing? And granted, that was the mom, but they were all present for this. He was there. He heard. So yes, I was thinking the same thing too, like, whoa, she didn't tell him. But at that point where they had made it into the room finally, after the spirits were not letting him in the room, do you think she had time to explain any questions he was going to have? Because he was going to have some follow-up questions.
She could have gave him a quick refresher. It's like, listen, do what I say. It's going to seem weird or something really quick before she just,
she is
the
that,
cause
though.
of her own problems.
Yeah, but she did kind of do that. He just wasn't paying attention. He was phoning it in. So it's not like she didn't give them a disclaimer is all I'm saying.
I feel like she was phoning it in.
It was her first time.
Then why are you going to act like she's the expert?
She specifically said, you got to just go with what I'm doing. You just got to do what I do. She said it.
We've already established that Steve doesn't trust her, before
That's
this.
True.
So she should have known going forward that I've got a guy who's kind of a skeptic. I need to at least, allay his fears a little bit before it. Because, a dad's going to fight for his wife and his, daughter. I mean, and when he's had everybody, he had the lead researcher before this and her both say,
don't go into the light. Yeah,
stay as far away as possible. And now she's saying it's almost like, what is she saying? Is she going to get both of them lost to me? That he's freaking out.
Yeah. So I don't know. Here's what I got to say. Did they die?
All
right. Yeah.
They did. If you look at Times Gone By now.
Oh my God. At that given moment, okay?
So this is the part where the beast, the large skull, appears or whatever out of the closet, because he does that too soon or whatever. It kind of reveals it. And, but they get pulled out on the other side, and you got the reverse birth. We've kind of talked about that with the ectoplasm placenta kind of covering both of them. And they even had to take Carol Ann and I don't know if this is a callback to the fact she was born in the house, but like they have her in the bathtub and like they have to kind of pull the placenta off her face and like wake her, it's that's the only tie to her being born in the house that they kind of go with.
Yeah. Spiritually, she was reborn.
And then there's the famous line, "This house is clean," which it's bullshit. She lied. Go back after this, edit in the Maury Povich determined this was a lie.
Yeah.
And we want that clip in there. Because it's not over, folks. We've got the last part of this movie where the shit really hits the fan.
But she's an expert.
Yeah, she's so good at what she does.
Just point out, we just had a conversation that apparently she's the expert.
Hey, she got the child back, okay? That was probably the most important thing. And then at this point...
The tests have proven that this is a lie.
Okay, here's the thing. Because we're getting to the end of this film, which is great. Because here's the thing. How was the mom so fucking comfortable sleeping in that house again after what had happened with her kids?
Fuck the house, putting him back in that room.
Yes, thank you. So, this house is clean. I'm glad you feel that way, and I'm glad you got my child back. I would be eternally grateful that she got my child back. Yes, there was some questionable things that happened, but what the fuck ever, I got my kid back. Now, let's get the fuck out of here. I'm not coming back to this place. And the husband leaving them there, I'll be home early. Motherfucker, you didn't get home till midnight.
He probably wasn't expecting the wife to put the kids back in the room. Because common sense would tell you probably that's a bad call.
He said, no. He said, if the kids get tired, just let them conk out.
Yeah,
but he didn't
somewhere else in the house,
and they had been sleeping in the living room for months at this point.
That's true. It was. Oh my God, why? Okay, anyways, let's move on because that was.
Do you think they had a conversation later, like when they're at the hotel? It's like, hey,
motherfucker,
what the fuck was that about? Why were they in the room?
You stupid bitch.
and you got to remember too, she left them to have a nice warm bath and maybe private session.
I would definitely do that. I would definitely. Okay, maybe not the private session, but that water wasn't even near as hot as I would prefer it to be, even though it was steaming up the whole goddamn room. I like to burn in my water. I like to boil. Okay,
that's because you're close to hell. I mean, she looked like she was a little bit taller than that.
More in my natural state, yes. So that's why she had hers a little cooler, a degree cooler. But that being said. Yes, I could totally see myself jumping into a hot bath because that was some stressful shit she went through. I thought, because it's been so long since I've seen this movie, I thought something bad was going to happen in the water. But no, that's not what happened.
No, that's where we get the rapey spinning room scene that comes right after this.
Which, she was ass naked in the tub. You couldn't try to...
You know
she was slippery. She couldn't get away.
The problem is every time I see this movie, all I think is a Scary Movie franchise.
Oh, yeah.
Where I think it was the second one where the clown pulls him right to bed and it goes opposite.
I was getting ready to say that exact scene where Ray.
Every time I see this, all I think is like that movie ruined that scene for me.
That's where that clown reminded me of.
Hey, what are you doing?
I'm like, why have I seen this here before? Okay, okay.
It's like Ray wants to have some fun, and then the clown's like, starts screaming. There's I was getting ready to say there's a scene where the clown doll finally attacks Robbie, pulls him under the bed, and then of course in my mind I cannot unsee Scary Movie 2, which is actually one of the best ones in that, or I actually like it better than the first one, honestly, because of some of the references. But that scene where he does that, it totally eclipses it in your mind after you've seen it. You
big time
at that point.
Rewrites it.
And this scene where Diane's spinning around the room might have also inspired another scene in Scary Movie 2 where Big Daddy Kane or whatever, the bad, the pimp ghost that's in the house,
my God,
played by basically Bull from Night Court. We've already mentioned him during at one point in the podcast. But he's like, he's kind of getting all rapey with Cindy at night or something like that.
He's having his way with her. He's just shoving his ghost pecker in her mouth.
And it kind of reminds you of what Diane's going through in that spinning room, is like she's getting, like moved around.
She just, she had been asleep. She would have just thought it was her husband trying to get a little extra handsy with her.
Hey, he spent some time on the Nautilus. Okay, he put in his time. He needs to get payback. Okay.
Oh my God.
That's all I'm going to say. You have the big skeleton monstrosity appears at one point in this scene. That was pretty well done. That looked like a Ghostbusters monster.
That's what I said. That's the one I was talking about. That was coming out of, like, it was attached to the door still.
Yeah.
Yes, that one specifically.
We have this one scene where she gets sparked and flies. Like I said, that looks awful. That's a Spielberg edit. It has to be, where it's like, oh, we can't have her head slam on the ground. We have to have her lightly float.
Well, the thing too, if you know anything about science, you understand for that to have happened, the voltage had to be astronomically high.
Okay.
She would have had burn marks on her soles. I mean,
the amount of spirits that are in this house, she probably got sparked, and then a spirit probably gracefully threw her against the wall and slid her down.
It's not her being thrown. It's the fact that you touched something with the voltage was so high that it pushed you back.
Yeah.
Okay, that usually stops your heart. Jurassic Park's a prime example of that.
Yes. So that's another Spielberg film. He learned over time, apparently.
Yes, he did. He learned, like, oh, that fell apart a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, if you touch it and the voltage is so high, it shot you back 15 feet. Yeah, you might want to.
Look at it. You have electrical knowledge, okay? Lots of it in your career. So you don't get to talk about this because you have actual knowledge of it.
That's what I'm bringing to the table. I'm bringing common sense because the movie apparently threw
but
parts
most people
away.
watching it don't have
my
that.
My dad was an electrician. I thought the same thing when I saw this shit. I'm like, this is stupid. But,
I was like, dang, that bitch is getting tossed. That's all I was thinking.
It goes back to a movie we were discussing the previous season of Death Holler, The Omen, where they have the scene of the mom and she's falling to the ground or whatever.
Oh my God!
That flip, and she barely grazes the ground. I thought the same thing when I saw this. I'm like, that's just the same scenario.
Super slow, and then she just turns and lands like she's sleeping sideways.
Yeah, it's like, oh, there was no thud, there was no loud. I mean, I know you didn't
Not even
like
a
House
plop.
of the Devil that well.
Ugh.
I know you weren't the biggest fan of House of the Devil, but that movie was visceral. Whenever they hit, they hit.
Yeah,
like
that's true.
They made sure.
There was definitely plopping and splattering and stuff like that. So yeah.
So you have, this is the big scene in the movie where Diane falls into the pool of corpses as their coffins are erupting out of the ground in the water. Probably the best scene in the movie. In my opinion.
And probably one of the most notorious scenes of this film.
See, you know what would have been awesome if there was more precursors, like them having visions when they're in the house of coffins popping out and like they could have did a big framework to lead up to, because it would have made that part scarier. If all of a sudden randomly they would see visions inside the house of corpses just breaking through and sticking out and like kind of reaching for it, it would have set the framework so when she went in the pool, even though the corpses didn't do anything, it would have been way more scary. Like, oh my God, they're going to try to grab her.
Yeah, because I thought they were going to do that anyways, even without knowing that.
What's funny, in the second movie, they have that exact scene you're talking about because she's got PTSD and she's like reliving it in her sleep, and she gets grabbed by the corpse hands or whatever while she's in, like in her sleep in the dream or whatever. It's like they did the reverse.
I mean, you kind of learn from it. Yeah. I mean, but like, you know what also doesn't make sense in this film? Because I was thinking, well, that's great, but how would that work? Because they've been living in that house for 7 years, and they haven't been seeing it up until this point. So, but then again, nothing makes sense because why all of a sudden did all the poltergeist activity just start after they've been living in this house for 7 years?
Hold on. This is where this really doesn't make sense. Because if they're building the foundation for a house, that means there's underground. The underground's probably going to be close to the area of the plumbing.
Yes.
So if they're digging down to put sewer and electricity and all these other factors into the house, they would have run across these coffins in the process of doing that. And not only that, but they're building a swimming pool in the backyard, and they would have ran across the coffins then.
And that swimming pool is way more than 6 feet deep, and that's when
even
corpse...
the underground's
and it's
yeah.
Well, and it's also spread far enough apart that they, just like you were saying, they would have hit a coffin at one point in the point of digging that up. I mean, there's no, even if you assume that they were in a part of the cemetery that didn't get filled in, which is, I mean, you have to jump to a lot of conclusions to even come to that point. But I mean, it wouldn't have been as far as that swimming pool was.
I'm an expert on how graveyards are done, and I just want you guys to know that the corpses just weren't in that area.
Yeah, but
that's how it works.
The mental gymnastics that took place right at the end, it was just like, oh my God, what the... You guys had the whole movie like they could have said, like when they were building the pool, like they ran across something weird, or hey, we found a coffin. That would have led the framework for him to question the developer to set more of a better framework. They could have ran it to a nice, logical, linear, like framing of what was the underlying issue.
Are we gonna like not even question about how coffins were breaking through concrete slabs?
Well, no,
the base of the house,
because
how a coffin busted through the garage door.
I know, but that's different because if the ghosts are now in full output, then that's different. Now you've took the entire idea of what the ghosts are doing, and you've let them run what in your head you think a ghost would do.
The proper terminology is poltergeist. They do not prefer to be called ghosts.
Whatever, but I'm saying if you would have set the groundwork to let them know, because if they were digging up that backyard and they uncovered a coffin, you now have the entire structure of the story to be put in a place where you can question the developer he works for. It starts to tie in what some of the issues are. You get a better idea. But then at that point, they would have been liable to explain the rest of the housing development not having those issues.
Yeah, but see, here's the thing, though. I found it to be a frightful surprise when all these corpses started popping up. And granted, it made sense because there was a conversation that took place.
You still would have been scared if they were like at the end, if they were still popping out like they were. You still would have been scared.
I would have had more questions as to why they stayed after they knew there was corpses there.
Because it happened.
They set the framework up that they had to stay because Carol Ann was trapped in the house. So
true.
That's the framework they operated on. But here's the thing.
But what about when they were digging up the pool, though? That was prior.
Both of you. I agree with both of you in the sense that, like, you know, at the point in the movie where they start popping up out of the ground, and even in this scene with the pool, it's because the ghosts are, you know, highly pissed off. Like the beast is at play. Like that's why they're coming out. Why? I agree. If they would have had the scene earlier, where like if they'd only discovered one coffin, it would have set up so much better for the movie.
That's true.
But Spielberg, and I know it had to be him because of the way his family friendly and all that stuff. That's when he substituted the Tweety bird in place of it. That's where you get like the Tweety getting dug up instead of the coffin, you know, by the
even
guys
then,
that are digging the pool.
That was, I don't think it didn't have that same.
It didn't play as well.
No, it didn't. Especially because they already had the framework in play now. The end of it tells you that the framework was there. They just decided not to use it.
Yeah, until you had to either infer or you figured it out at the end, which I personally don't find a problem with that.
Because they could have did way more creepier things. If they uncovered the coffin and then after he had the conversation with the developer, then they could have got really creepy with coffins popping up, like in like as ghosts, and then being gone in the blink of an eye.
Well, you coulda, woulda. That's what part 2 is for.
Okay.
And how much, I mean, it would have been creepier, granted, I mean, had that scene, but also how much, I mean, they could have even had Teague, they could have developed him a little bit more and made him even skeevier because he could have explained away. It's like, oh, that's just that one place. Like, you just found the one coffin. Maybe they missed it. You know, maybe that was
he could have bullshitted it. He could have been like, oh, what? He's all, they promised we had everything. I'm going to go talk to these people about this.
Yeah.
You could have made him even sleazier.
Oh, my God. I guess that takes us up to you son of a bitch. You moved the cemetery, but you didn't move the bodies.
Yes, this line. You know, you have the her saying, "Oh God, help me!" Whenever the only time in the movie where like Diane gets religious is where she's like trying to save her kids from that fleshy portal beast.
Yeah,
and she's like, "Oh God, help me!" It's like, okay, you waited a little too long to try to get God on your side, woman. But you know, whatever.
Isn't that people in general?
That's always how it goes. Is you wait until the last moment and then you turn to religion. That's
not a Catholic
statement.
I know, but I'm saying, but that's people in general. People don't practice religion, and all of a sudden, when they're in this existential crisis, it's like, oh my God, help me.
But then you have the bodies bursting out of the ground, and then like literally out of the concrete and through the the flooring and everything else, the foundation. And you have that great line, Craig T. Nelson, and he delivers this so well in the movie when he's screaming at Teague. He's like, "You son of a bitch! You moved the cemetery, didn't you? But you didn't move the bodies. You son of a bitch! Why did you move the body? Or you left the bodies, but you moved the tombstones?"
Yeah.
And then he starts screaming, "Why?"
That was a good part of the movie. That really, I just wish they would have set more up on that, man. But that was an awesome part.
You know what was not a good scene? The one that followed right after, where the daughter gets dropped off by her boyfriend in a Trans Am, because 16-year-olds are driving around on those.
He was hanging out doing homework together.
And
There's
she's
no way they were
just
fucking in
staring
the
and
back.
screaming, and they're yelling at her to get in the car. I mean, the yelling
all she can do is like blankly scream.
That was
"What's happening?"
That was horrible.
That was so annoying. I think
I would have opened the door as a dad, grabbed her by her fucking clothes, and threw her in like, "You dummy! Let's get the fuck out of here."
I think everybody screaming at the dad to start the car, screaming at the top of their lungs while he's trying to get the key. I don't think that was helping. Just nonstop, just people screaming in his ear. I'm surprised he didn't turn over and slap the shit out of them. I would have loved to seen that, actually.
Calm down, goddammit.
Yeah, shut the fuck up, I'm trying.
I wanted to see that. I'm 100% with you. But I want to give credit to Teague in this scene, the actor who played Teague, because he's given that look in this movie that you get in both Return of the Living Dead 1 and 2, that look of just abject, like, what the fuck am I in the middle of?
The skeletons came out of the closet.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
It's when all your misdealings come in full bore to bear.
And then, of course, the house collapses in on itself with a massive burst of energy. And the weird thing, I mean, that scene was filmed. The funny thing about it was filmed. They used like some kind of massive like industrial vacuum at the same time that they had a bunch of and they would never get by with this, especially after what happened recently with Alec Baldwin. But leave that as it is. Where a bunch of the crew members
what did Alec Baldwin do?
Blasting the house with holes, with a shotgun while the vacuum was working to suck it, back in.
Is that what happened?
That's how they said they filmed that.
What?
So, yes.
Out of all the ways to do it, that seems like the most inept way of doing it.
And they only had one take to get it done.
So
because obviously.
So what was the house? Was it a giant aired up house or something?
I don't know. I mean, like the one that they collapsed had to have been like some kind of air thing or
inflatable.
Like some kind of, yeah, like some kind of thing that they did like that. But that's literally how they filmed it. Like the pump action shotguns, just blasting the thing while they had a vacuum like sucking it in on itself.
That is such a weird way to do that.
Okay, it's a weird way, but like for all the excitement that was going on in the film, I was like, okay, it fucking works.
Yeah, it did.
I'll
give it that.
So I'm not even gonna talk shit about it.
I like that singularity disimploding on itself. I want
to give a shout out to the Simpsons Treehouse of Horror, because they had this one episode early in the show, early in it might have been the second season or that they did that, which it was called Bad Dream House.
Oh yeah,
and basically it's a combination of Poltergeist and Amityville Horror. But the house is like talking to them, and it's like trying to get them to kill themselves. And, and eventually Marge gets fed up and gives it an ultimatum. It's either got to live with them or it moves on. And it's sitting there thinking, and it's like, and she's like, well, what, how's it going to be? And then like he's in the house, like, let me think about it for a second. Eternity with the Simpsons or destroy myself. Eternity with the Simpsons or destroy, and then it collapses in on itself because living with the Simpsons is that terrible of a proposition.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Well, in the beginning, they're all scared, and as time goes on, they just accept all the horrible things happening, like the blood coming out. The Simpsons, like, yeah, that's fine. Like everything became like normalized, and the house couldn't like rationalize it.
Yeah, actually, at one point, Bart's like tipped, and it's like, do that blood thing again. And he's like, no, I don't want to.
Yeah.
Leave me alone.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
And then, of course, the movie ends with the family going to the Holiday Inn motel. They roll the TV outside like Fred Flintstone throwing the cat out of the front door. And then that Jerry Goldsmith, la, 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 and play it over the end of it. And which it's been criticized. I think I don't know who really said it, that the music in this was way too Disney-like for the movie they were trying to go for.
Yeah, it was way too soft, and there was no.
It didn't build any anticipation at all. There was
no.
Like a good horror movie needs a score that anticipates dread in some factor, and that never translated.
But it is an iconic scene. Just seeing that TV pushed out.
Yeah,
I do like that.
I saw that. I was like, I was thinking too when that was happening. I was like, they probably never want to see another TV ever fucking again.
They make a point of it in the second movie. He won't let any of them. Like Robbie's like, Dad, it's been long enough. Don't you think that I should be able to watch TV? And he's like, No, hell no, you're not watching TV ever. You know what happened? And then the son Robbie says, Well, I'm going to grow up retarded. I think it's literally what he says because I don't have all my friends are able to watch TV and I can't.
Wow.
Which is probably the opposite. He would have probably been smarter for not watching
yes.
TV, but we won't get into that.
Yeah, no shit.
And we've already kind of discussed this about Tobe Hooper did not direct this movie. That's the controversy. I don't feel like he did. He was there. He was on set. I'm not saying the man didn't do his job.
Yeah.
But that face ripping scene is literally the only thing that feels like him in the whole movie.
Yeah.
The Directors Guild of America actually launched an investigation to make sure that Hooper's involvement wasn't being downplayed because Spielberg, in his infinite wisdom when he was promoting the movie, kept taking credit for everything.
Oh, my God.
Makes sense because he did.
Yeah.
But I mean, he kept saying, well, I did this and I did that. And people started talking and they launched an investigation. They's like, did Hooper not get any credit for doing this whatsoever? And then he had to backtrack and he made a big public apology, and stressed how much Hooper really helped him.
JK, everybody. Just kidding.
But he definitely micromanaged the entire thing. You can tell. It's a Spielberg movie. We've talked about the curse. Oh, I did not mention this. Those skeletons, the reason that everybody thinks that this curse is real is because those skeletons that were popping up at the end of the movie, especially in the pool, were all real skeletons that they used. They were all supposedly like the bodies of like Indians, like from India, not Native Americans, but which kind of funny because the ancient Indian burial ground,
oh
and
my
they
God.
used Indian skeletons.
So, hold on.
Supposedly.
So doing any other stuff to make it really scary was outside the wheelhouse, but bringing in real corpses or skeletons to fill those roles, that was acceptable?
Well, they're from India,
well,
so the value wasn't very high.
Here's the thing, that prop guy that was so pissed off that everybody claimed that there was a curse about this movie that I was talking about earlier, he was explaining it. He said, they use real life skeletons in most films. He's like, do you remember Frankenstein where Fritz like bumps into the skeleton at the beginning of the movie? And he's like, that was real. He's like, this movie, that movie, he was talking about like William Castle's movie House on Haunted Hill. He said that was a real skeleton.
Yeah, but
he said they used them because they were cheap. He said it was actually cheaper to use real skeletons on loan from like some kind of medical facility than it was to actually.
They're also comparing that to movies that are from like 30 years prior.
Like, I agree with you. And there was only one skeleton in each one of those movies he makes the argument about.
Okay, so that it was cheaper to import real skeletons than to have plastic skeletons.
Yes,
I don't buy it. I don't buy it.
Yeah, I can't wrap. You're gonna tell me Hollywood doesn't have a plethora of these skeletons already to be rent out for loan for movies that need skeletons?
Well, now they probably do.
But even then, they probably did.
I don't know. And you know what? Here's the thing: is like as an actress, you couldn't pay me enough to go into a muddy pool with real skeletons. I can't do it. That's insane.
Right until they show you a couple $1 million.
That's fucking insane. I would have some fucking questions like, why can't we afford? Oh, you're gonna pay me a couple million. Cool. I'm gonna take some of that money and buy some fucking skeletons. How many we need? We need 30. You want 30? I will pay for that shit. Send those back to where they belong. Send them home.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. They can make the argument all they want to about these skeletons and how that shouldn't affect anything because they're used commonly. Well, first of all, there's a lot of Hollywood films that are supposedly cursed. So
yes.
they can say what they want to, but I mean, there's that. And if you want to throw out there, I mean, even if you're an atheist or whatever, you got to, I mean, at least in my opinion, you've got to at least admit there's some bad juju that you're creating by getting a bunch of corpses.
Yes.
And like throwing them together, like and like just playing around with them, basically, like not giving them the respect whatsoever.
Yeah, it's 100% exploitative.
I need a sworn statement and an affidavit from each corpse saying that prior to them dying and becoming a skeleton, that they wanted to be an actor and they wanted their skeleton to be used on set.
Yeah, the worst thing you can do, which is exploit anybody, is exactly what's happening.
Yes, and they made a film about it.
and exploiting a dead body. I mean, like, he can make the argument whatever he wants to in that. I'm just saying that, and the funny thing is that they tried to play off in the beginning of that Cursed Films episode about this, that, you know, it was a rumor that they were, you know, fakes, you know, real skeletons versus fake ones. That guy, he comes in at the end of it. He basically admits, he's like, you know, he doesn't say that they were real, but he's like, yeah, we use real skeletons all the time. So he didn't deny that they were real skeletons. So I think that confirms that they really did use a bunch of dead bodies in this scene. And that, I mean, I could see that being the potential for a curse. I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah, 100. Oh my God, that is ridiculous.
So I mean, and we've kind of mentioned this already, but the cultural impact of the film, I mean, it's hard to downplay. I mean, like, you got Scary Movie 2 making parody of it, The Simpsons making parodies, the ancient Indian burial ground theme, just is, I mean, it's in Poultrygeist. I mean, you know, they use that basis.
What year does Pet Sematary come out? What year did that come out?
It was early 90s, like 91, 92.
I mean,
as far as when King wrote it, I don't know.
1989.
I think it might have been right after this film too.
Oh yeah, I'm curious if he got not that, it might have gave him the passion or the idea or the structure to try to put it together.
Hold on.
Speaking of that, do you know who was originally tapped to write this movie, but they couldn't work it out with him? Stephen King.
Okay, listen to this.
He probably had a totally different direction.
The movie Pet Sematary came out in 1989, but the book Pet Sematary, 1983.
Yeah,
right after this movie.
Yeah, he was probably on a coke bender watching it.
He's like, oh man, what if they did bury, like, what if they did the reverse and they buried bodies in the cemetery?
No,
oh my God.
But Stephen King did it the right way. He actually made a horror movie. So they set the structure and they failed at it to a degree. And Stephen King's like, I got this. Let me help you out.
Yeah, let me show you how it's done.
Yeah.
Hold my cocaine mirror for
oh my God.
No, because Pet Sematary is it's the one that hits. Pet Sematary is super well done. Even the movie which strays from the book is done really well.
Oh yeah, and the people that got Fred Gwynn will never be replaced, no matter what they say. I mean, Herman Munster.
Yeah.
That part. I mean, there's a reason that South Park uses that character anytime they want a creepy person to pop up on screen. I mean,
the UPS man be coming around here.
You don't want to go down that road.
Yeah. The milkman come by and fuck your wife. Yeah, that character is so good on South Park, man.
It really is, and especially the games. If you've played any of the Stick of Truth or the Fractured Butthole,
yes.
he's in that. Yeah. They were so good.
Yeah, those games are. It's crazy how good that storyline is for those games.
It is 100%. Like I said, this movie also ignited a new interest in paranormal research. We got to remember, everybody, scary ghost movies were set in Victorian mansions prior to this. This is the very first movie that really that legitimately moved the haunted house into a suburban home. Like, so I'll give Spielberg credit for that. Like, I mean, every other movie prior to this was some big Victorian mansion. I mean, including, you know, the House on Haunted Hill. I mean, all those movies like that, they had to get this big creepy Victorian mansion because that's where ghosts lived at. Not in somebody's home. I mean, you know, like a typical American home. So, I mean, this really did move ghost into the everyday home of people. So
it made it more plausible that, oh my God, this could happen to us.
Well, I think, you know, now that you say that, I could think the soft sell is what actually made it. Because if you would have made a hard sell, I'm curious if it would have the same ripple through society and the same amount of eyes watching it. I mean, because how many people went to watch Exorcist and was 100% turned off by it?
I mean, there's a lot that claim that they were, but I wonder how much truth was behind that.
It's hard.
I think you had to be appalled by The Exorcist.
Well, you also, too, the media is the one sending the signal. So if the media is saying everybody hates it, and if you're watching TV and they're like, oh, that makes me I hate it too then.
Yeah, well, and then you can't admit that you liked it.
Yes.
And you got to think too. I mean, The Goonies is one of those films just like this, where you've got a generation of people who were raised on it, got freaked out by it as kids because their parents saw, you know. So this is a fairly, you know, safe movie because, I mean, stuff we talked about, they could have went harder with it, but they didn't. and then they turn around and introduce their kids. So the soft playing Spielbergian effect of it all actually is giving this movie more legs than it probably would have had otherwise if it had been a harder horror film.
Yeah, because what I think what would have happened, it would have got a John Carpenter effect where it has a hit, but it's not set up for the time frame. So as time goes on, it becomes a cult, and then by then it ripples into society way later. This actually had on the Johnny on the spot impact where it actually created a giant ripple in that moment instead of down the road.
And then the ripple, just keeps happening because more and more people get introduced to it. I mean, it's showing its age now, but I mean, they tried some different things with that god awful remake that Sam, I don't remember the guy's name that's in it. Anyways, there's the actor that's in it now, or that was in the remake, came out in 2017? It wasn't that long ago. That movie's awful. And they tried to update it and it just didn't work. And I think I don't know.
I didn't realize they did a remake of it.
Oh yeah.
Wait, remake of what?
Poltergeist.
Oh.
Yeah, they did a remake. It was bad. I think they even worked in the thing about, she's seeing them. She starts speaking to them through her tablet,
oh my God.
That way.
I like how the clown is the front and center for the movie poster.
Yeah. Sam Rockwell, he's been in several things. He was in, the second Iron Man movie is the main bad guy in that, the corporate, military industrial complex guy that was in that. But I mean, they updated the movie slightly, but it just didn't have the same effect. And I don't know if it's the Spielbergian part that they lost, if it was because they were trying to go harder with it. I just kind of felt like it was a retread that didn't, do enough new to necessitate its existence, basically.
It did pretty terrible in the reviews I'm looking at right now. Oh, man. So not that we really hold this true, but the tomato meter got 30% by critics and 22% audience. So this was
the audience one is a matter.
Well, it is, but look at how close together they are. They're
close.
Rarely that.
That says something when they're that close.
So all righty.
So we'll ignore that movie ever existed. I think there is a potential for a remake here, but I want to say that the potential for a remake, you need to set it. You probably need to keep the 80s setting. I hate to say it, but it probably needs to be one of those ones we was talking about earlier that's like a new age 80s set film to kind of keep some of the stuff. Because I don't know, the tablet thing just don't do it for me. Somebody getting
it's
talking through their...
It's haunting you through your Wi-Fi.
Yeah, it doesn't have the same attachment. It's missing that. The thing with the lack of technology, you have a lot of mystery that can be shrouded.
Could you imagine a poltergeist powering that tablet for a kid? Okay, just picture this, okay? Bear with me for a minute. But the kid has a tablet, that's weird. I haven't plugged this tablet in 8 days and it's still working. Oh my God, I haven't been plugged into Wi-Fi in forever and it's still working like that. Okay, the kid's gonna be like, this is fucking awesome. They don't care where they get their Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can go the route of having the Wi-Fi password being Indian Burial Ground or something.
Yeah.
Throw that in there.
666.
That's how they tie into it.
Oh my God, dude. Fucking stupid.
But yeah, this movie, like I said, it ignited a whole new interest in paranormal research. It led to more ghost films being set in modern settings. So it has a cultural impact that we still feel today.
Oh, definitely.
I'm kind of curious because the 80s was a different era in America. There was a lot more of the hardcore Bible thumpers. I'm curious how many of those people took this movie as oh my God.
Probably.
No, I'm serious. If you look at the 80s, it was still religion was there, but the religion was way more cult-like to a degree. So I can imagine that having it a huge impact on the culture to a degree, even though the movie by today's standards is pretty monotone.
I wonder how long it took for Tipper Gore to try to get it banned is what I want to know.
Oh, my God. Well, to be fair, in the 1980s, the Satanic Panic, there was a legit Satanic Panic, that what it was labeled in the 1980s. So I'm sure that triggered a lot of fucking people. Because people were like, oh, this is real. This is happening. Oh, my God, our children are being possessed,
Oh, my God.
So.
And this came right after, you got to remember, this came right after the whole religious kind of renaissance, if you want to call it that, of like the films of like The Exorcist, The Omen, all those satanic films, which is interesting that we're going from one to the other. It came right after that time period, so people are already primed for the afterlife, the supernatural, the religious aspects. They were primed for this sort of movie in a way.
Yeah.
As far as the ratings go,
wait, let's explain it to the Hubs first, because he doesn't. I don't know that he doesn't know our rating score, and we might want to. I mean, being that it's the first episode of this particular season, did you want me? I have it in front of me. You want me to go over that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so we do a rating scale of 5 being the best, 1 being the lowest. We are rotten corpses. We don't do Rotten Tomatoes in here. A 5 would be certified fresh corpse. A 4 would be rigor mortis. A 3 would be active decay. 2 is advanced decay, and 1 is rancid. It was putrefying. So that's what our score is. So yeah, think of what your score is. Reverend's going to go first. I'll let you go next, and I'll go last.
I'm giving this movie a 4 out of 5 because the legacy that it had. I mean, I remember watching as a kid, and it did scare me as a child, even though today I'm dead inside and hardly anything scares me. And it cemented Spielberg's place in 80s cinema. You cannot think of Spielberg without thinking of this film, whether he wants to be the case or not. But I mean, it's just one of the pillars that he used to get to the point where he was basically in all of the films during that time period, or the ones that really stood out.
Yeah, no doubt.
And the special effects were great for the most part. We've discussed the times where they were kind of janky and stupid, but I mean, and the plot, it's one of those things. But it's a spook show. There's a reason that this is one of the most beloved. I mean, because we've discussed this about the HHN Halloween Horror Nights at Universal. There's a reason that the Poltergeist house is one of the favorites, because when you start the haunted house by walking into the pool, the corpses popping out at you. That's how you start a haunted house. I mean, that's a hell of a way to get into things.
Yeah, I did not like that scene. I like that scene, but I did not like it. All right, babe, do you know what your score would be?
Yeah. The movie, to me, nothing about it was scary. Even when I was a kid. Like, there's no suspense factor that ever gets built. But now being an adult, looking at it, the acting itself is a part that actually sells the movie more than anything.
Yeah.
Because the movie's super flat when it comes to any type of suspense or tension building. I mean, which they're key factors in any horror movie. If you can't build the tension and suspense, then everything you do outside of that falls flat. And to me, a lot of it's flat. I give it a 3 out of 5 because the acting itself carried the movie, but all the other mechanisms going into place to build the suspension never really happened. There wasn't enough of the tension being built. So when you did have any potential scary part, it hits. And then those scary moments need to be the things that hit in a scary movie.
Okay. I give this one a 3.5. I mean, I really liked it, which is funny because I feel like I should have a higher score because technically everything you just said where it doesn't build any tension, the reason why I was scared is because I wasn't anticipating some of the things to happen that happened. So because I didn't have that warning that something's about to happen, other than I kind of figured the corpses were going to jump out of the mud pool and everything, I think I liked it because I was so scared when stuff did happen. I was like, oh my God, like for me, it was like a major jump. So for me, it was scary, but that's because I'm a scaredy cat. I think everybody by this point knows that. So I'm easily scared. So I really enjoyed this film. I probably should jump up to about a 4 because realistically, I enjoyed it a little more than some.
Let me critique that just a little bit. The whole idea of tension is a critical aspect because if you watch a zombie movie, you know what the framework is, you know what happens.
Yes.
But in a good zombie movie, even though you know what everything is and the mechanics of it, the thing that scares you when you watch a zombie movie to this day sometimes is the tension factor that gets built into the structure of what's happening.
Yes, it terrifies me.
But you already know what the structure of it is.
Yeah.
So you should be anticipating it. But the fact that the tension and everything gets built and told in a certain way, that it gets you to the point where it gets scary.
I'm not going to take that away, but I am going to say not turning the corner and not expecting because they're playing light and fluffy music and everything's going well.
If we're rating it as a scary movie and not a movie.
We're rating it as a movie.
Okay.
We rate them as a movie.
Okay, I thought we were rating it. Okay, as a movie, I give it a 4.
We used to rate it scary, but then we started realizing there's some really good films out there that are not super scary.
Yeah, if I was rating it as a movie, I'll give it a 4. But as a scary movie,
scary movie, I'm going to give it a 3.5.
It fails as a scary movie. I mean, for sure, I'd give it a 1.5 if I even get it that much.
Yeah,
as far as the scary
the
goes.
acting is the only thing that really sells it on any type of dramatic build up to a degree.
I will say the amount of kids and just people screaming in this film was so fucking annoying. Like the kid like not being able to get the words out and like screaming at his mom and not getting the words out that the kid was on the TV. I fucking hated that.
But that's the kids. Our son does that.
That's true. But
in
he
real
also
life,
does not speak very well.
But he does that right now in real life, and he's not even an actor.
What and you got, and it's much less in here. You got to, if you do it in context, it's much less of a thing here versus like say the original Night of the Living Dead. I'm gonna go back to that, where you literally have the cliche of Barbara falling down 15 million times in her big spiked heel pumps that she's got, tripping over them, which is a whole cliche that they've made fun of since then, and the fact that she literally sits comatose what time she isn't screaming in that movie and does nothing else. Like that's all that character does in that whole entire movie. So, given that sort of characterization, it didn't bother me as much.
Yeah.
I would argue more that this is an adventure movie. This is almost like
hold on. Don't gloss.
Spookier version of the Goonies, if you want to know my opinion.
Go back to that Night of the Living Dead with Barbara. You didn't like that character?
Not in the original film. I know the I like it better given the context, because I've heard argument made that each member of that initial house represents like a functioning member of society. You got the people whenever they're presented with stress and drama and any kind of like emergency situation where they shut down, they can't function.
Yeah, I thought she nailed that part she was supposed to play. She showed you the average real person's reaction to a lot of things. I think that her character is more tangible to reality. That's what, but the average person watching it, if you're watching those movies, let's understand that you're already into horror and you already make more faster split second decisions. But she encapsulates that person that isn't any of that. Like people, prime example, people you work with that mirror that Barbara lady to a T in real life. I'm serious.
Well, it's a common thing, anyways, and I mean, human beings. It's some, we don't want to stand out from the crowd. Which, granted, the people she was around were active, so it might have been easier for her. But I mean, it's a common psychological thing that when human beings, like, say there's somebody there dying because they just need CPR, and there's a group of people around them and nobody's moving, the inertia that you have to physically or mentally overcome to even get away from the crowd just to perform the CPR to save the person is almost it's monumental that you have to cross that, because you don't want to be separated from the crowd. That's like a human trait.
Yes.
So I mean, it makes sense to have the paralysis. It's just as a character watching her through the movie. I mean, especially as somebody who didn't start on Night of the Living Dead, and I started on Return of the Living Dead, and then kind of worked my way back.
Yeah.
But you got to remember too. But in that time frame, you had a giant cultural shift where people were more aggressive in nature. I don't know. You're looking at two different time sections of human history.
I completely agree with you. And as an adult, I can look back on it and I totally agree with your assessment. And I actually love Night of the Living Dead, the original, even with that part. Yeah. And especially whenever I read like the different stereotypes you got like, I mean, like we'll break it down when we get to the zombie season, but like each one of those represents like somebody in society. I mean, like the two main characters, you've got Cooper and Ben. Whenever they're fighting each other, they're like the authoritarian figures that both have like similar ideas on how to do things, but they can't fucking agree with each other like the goddamn government to actually get anything done. Well,
the thing about the Barbara lady too is, if you think about that movie, how much did she pull you into the movie because of the way she acted? It pulls you into it. It makes you like, get up, move.
Yeah, that's true.
It pulls you into the movie so far you forget that she's actually an actor and that's who she is.
Yeah.
That's the whole idea.
That's what she's portraying.
It pulls you so hard in the movie that you're getting mad at her for acting the way she is and totally disregarding that she's actually acting. You're thinking that's how she is.
That is true. Like she disappears in the role like Teague did in this for people, I guess. And, you blame her for being, she was just acting.
Yeah. It's actually a really good job. You get so irritated with her for not doing something. And that's how good of a job that she came across selling that role.
Yeah, it's annoying, but it works. So
it pulls you into the movie. You're
you're
like,
screaming,
do something. What the
like watching football on TV?
Yeah, it's like, what are you doing? Like, help out. Like, but that was her role, was to be like, to show you how an inactive person actually is damaging to a problem that's happening.
But do you have an argument against this being an adventure film instead of a horror film? Like, I mean, that's literally what I think.
More Goonies like, with less adventure.
I'm gonna go with a horror adventure. There's definitely, I mean, like the Goonies.
You got to remember the Goonies had horror elements. I mean, they had like the skeleton, pirate that could have. I mean, they could have easily twisted at the end and made it into like a horror film. They really could have.
I suppose. I don't know. I was scared, so I said what I said, and I'm sticking by it.
That's fine. It's your opinion.
No, that's fine. I mean, we've established that you're more freaked out about this stuff. You've not been dead inside like some of the rest of us for years. So.
Some films I have, depending, because the acting was good in this. Had the acting been horrible, I would have been like, you know.
The acting was awesome.
So, Reverend, what's the next film we're gonna review?
The next film we're going to review, I think we've talked about doing a double feature where we're going to discuss the original Haunting film, the black and white movie based upon the Shirley Jackson novel, and then the Haunting, the remake with that was done in the 90s or late 90s, I believe it was, early 2000s.
Yes.
With Owen Wilson and Catherine Zeta-Jones.
Catherine Zeta-Jones.
Yeah.
You jumped on that way too fast. Catherine Zeta-Jones.
I'm a huge movie buff, so like as soon as you start, I know right away a lot of this stuff.
Has nothing to do with her being a hot babe.
And so, anyways, that we're going to discuss that, and then we're going to have a special episode discussing The Haunting of Hill House, which is the Netflix series that kind of takes all of that and kind of reworks it into a really, really well done drama.
Absolutely.
With horror elements.
Yes. The Hubs and I finished that, so definitely looking forward to reviewing that.
So do you have any more plugs for Blue Collar BS that you want to throw in here before we get out of here?
Don't do that.
Well, that's what we do. Like, we had a crossover with Blue Collar BS. You guys know where to catch it every Friday night, 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you want to catch us, we have a website. It's deathholler.com. You can go check out what we have going on there right now. Kind of like little updates on what's going on with the show, links to where to listen, which you can find us on all major platforms: Spotify, YouTube, Castbox, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, Google Podcast, iTunes, Amazon, and Audible. I was really surprised when they invited us. And Instagram. We have an Instagram if you want to go see some of the photos there. Some of the BS we have going on. So find us, like and subscribe, share, rate and review us on iTunes. It really helps out the show. Thanks to everyone out in where are we popular right now?
Slovakia.
We're number 18. Woo!
With a bullet.
Oh my God. I don't know what they see in us, but hey, we appreciate you listening.
We definitely appreciate it. And with that, peace be with you.
And with your spirit.